Next match will be the second top four featuring Simone Sanvito and Alessio Fuscà, who we featured earlier, like you've already mentioned, with that Tauros.
We have seen both players as well. Simone playing a bit more of a balance, the new balance with the Chi Yu, Iron Hands, Gyarados, and the Amoonguss. We have seen it quite often before as well, which is just one of those really good teams, consistent teams that has been working quite well. And Alessio a bit more with the Golden and of course that Tauros, that critting menace that it was earlier as well.
It was so impactful in the match earlier when Alessio was utilizing it. You know, the Waterbury Taurus, has that Intimidate. We've seen how impactful Intimidate can be in that last match and throughout the tournament this weekend. But the Taurus in particular, with those big threatening moves like the Wave Crash, like the Close Combat, and that high base speed stat as well, it really does put a lot of the other Pokemon that are quite common in this format under a lot of pressure. Chi Yu is definitely something that doesn't really want to come up against the Paldean Taurus. In particular, it doesn't want to take a Wave Crash, and you kind of almost have to, you're almost baiting it in to go for that terrestrialization, which in a lot of situations can be quite advantageous for you as a player, because if you've still got your Terra type active, you can unleash it at any point. You've got the kind of pick of the four Pokemon that you've chosen, whereas you've almost had to have forced your opponent into that situation. We have got the accolades on the screen though for our players. We have touched on them before. Simone Sanvito, obviously a previous European International Champion in 2018, more recent at the top 16 at the World Championships, and then previously top 4 regional finish at the Marmol Regionals and a finalist in the Dortmund Regionals back in 2017.
Yeah, that's not that long ago if you think about it. It's only 6 years, right? And then, of course, for Alessio, we have the 2020 Bochum Regional Top 32, which is in its own right also very impressive, because we have another accolade to add right now. At least we have top 4 of the of the Turin Special Event 2023. At least you add. Let's make that a bit more. Let's make that finalist, or well, you know what? Even champion there.
Yeah, that's it. The bare minimum, it will be top 4. What an accomplishment in itself, and another accolade to add to the roster for Alessio. And everything to do going into this match, you know, played incredibly well in that feature match earlier when we had him on stream. And I'm guessing he's going to be looking to replicate that, but it's going to be a hard challenge against Simone. Played also on stream earlier, was the only player up to that point to end the undefeated record of Andrea at that stage, and in very convincing fashion as well.
Yes, exactly. Simone was playing quite well in that regard, just being able to outmaneuver really just every time where you had the Chi Yu for just those dark pulses were very nice to have. You have, of course, the Gyarados support with the Thunder Wave Waterfall Taunt, which is always something that you are looking forward to, as we have the teams on the screen as well. Fluttermane, Amoonguss, Chi Yu, Gyarados, Tinglu, and Iron Hands. These 6 have been working quite well together recently, but a bit more recent changes. We have the substitute of Fluttermane, making sure to bait out any sort of double attacks on that. Amoonguss with Clear Smog, more dealing with these setup kind of Pokemon, as you have a lot of Iron Hands running around with Source Hands as well.
Yeah, interestingly as well, some interesting Terra choices on this team as well. You've got that Fire Terra typing on the Iron Hands. That helps it out drastically and prevents things like Will-O-Wisp affecting your damage output. We are moving quickly across the other side of the field, and we have Alessio's team with that Goldingo, the Amoonguss, Shen Pao, Taurus, Tinglu, and the Dragapult.
Yeah, Dragapult Shen Pao is something that we have seen. Another partner than Dragonite, just being able to really not get faked out either because of thanks to that Ghost typing, and just Clear Body, not really caring about any Intimidates, just being able to make sure that it is able to do those strong stab attacks with the Dragon Darts, even a possible Outrage and Phantom Force. And if you terrestrialize Terra Blast, which will also technically be stab at that point.
Yeah, and I think something that Shauna pointed out earlier on in the broadcast was that Tinglu is something that we can see on both sides of the field here, and it's something that we've probably not been talking about enough, I think. Tinglu is so impactful in this format, appearing quite a lot across, you know, David's got a Tinglu in his team, and
Yeah.
now both of these semi-finalists have Tinglu as well. So really, a really good representation for that one Pokemon, and how useful it is in this one format where we've got so many big offensive threats on that special attacking spectrum.
Yes, exactly. And for the people at home, you can vote who you think might be winning this match. On the left, we have Simone Sanvito, and on the right, Alessio Fuscà. Right now, the poll going quite even. A nice fist bump there, the respect towards each other, because these players are definitely honed in these 2 last days. They are known to have been the strong players recently as well, to just showcase all of these amazing Pokemon, and we are about to be able to watch them, which I'm so excited about as well.
And the nice thing to mention as well, that, you know, we've been talking all weekend, can someone dethrone the Italians and take their event this weekend? Well, unfortunately not, because the only players that are left in this event now are all Italian. So will be an Italian, will be keeping the title in Turin this weekend, and what a great showing from all of them over the weekend. Get your votes in though. Who are you supporting in this match, Simone or Alessio? I think it's going to be a really tight game. I think both teams interact with each other very, differently, you know, and depending on how players lead in this match, they definitely have ways to kind of counteract some of the bigger threats on either side of the field.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, for example, because the Iron Hands is the Pokemon that sets up with the Sword Stance, instead of most of the time you have Chi-Yu as well. Chi-Yu also having that Nasty Plot option. If you, for example, are able to set up a Nasty Plot in front of that Paldean Tauros with that Mirror Herb, the Tauros will get a special attack raise instead of what it would rather have. It's an attack raise. So trying to get rid of that item so that your Iron Hands can potentially later still do the Sword Stance.
Yeah, it can be something that you really kind of use against your opponent, like you're mentioning. I think the good use of something like Nasty Plot is a really clever way to get rid of that move that can be a bit problematic. You definitely don't want to be sitting in front of the Tauros and going for a Sword Stance with your Iron Hands if you're Simone, because you're essentially giving that Tauros free boosts, and you're spending one turn actually getting those, whereas the Tauros isn't spending a turn at all.
Exactly, as we are now ramping up to our top 4, Alessio versus Simone. We have the Tinglu and the Dragapult on deck. Tinglu lowering every special attack here thanks to its Vessel of Ruin, and the Gyarados intimidating the Tinglu, but not the Dragapult thanks to its Intimidate. Gyarados and, of course, Iron Hands, both quite strong Pokemon. Gyarados being able to potentially go for any kind of speed control right now.
Yeah, it has got access to that Thunder Wave, and the Dragapult is quite susceptible to that. So maybe the reason why we do see it switch out. Smart play from Alessio here to bring in that Gold Ingo that is going to have that immunity through, as you see that good Gold ability.
That was an excellent play. The Dream Punch coming out into Tinglu, doing quite a bit of damage, over 50%, as the Ruination coming out into that Gyarados slot, just trying to make sure that this Gyarados goes down with its HP quite a bit there. Because that Gyarados doesn't have a Citrus Berry or any other healing berry, this Goldugo is able to hit it quite hard with a Thunderbolt as well.
Yeah, the Goldingo switch in from Alessio is quite nice here, because it's not really pressured at all from anything on Simone's side of the field. It doesn't really worry about anything that the Iron Hands is going to throw out immediately at this point in time, immune to those fighting type attacks. Of course, that would change if it does Terastallize, but not really preferably the option, because it is that Terra Water type, and it does then become weak to those big electric type attacks. So in a nice position to threaten that Gyarados with the Thunderbolt that it does carry, as we see the Tinglu return to the trainer, and he is going to switch it out for that Amoonguss.
Amoonguss, a very nice pick, because it's able to resist any attacks that the Gyarados or the Iron Hands might be going for, as the Goldugo is Nasty Plotting, seeing the option right here to do it. Waterfall doing quite a bit of respectable damage, and the Wild Charge. Let's see if this Goldugo is hanging on. It is still hanging on there. The Iron Hands taking a bit of recoil damage, but the Goldugo has successfully been able to Nasty Plot. Now you have the Amoonguss on the field, which is able to redirect any sort of attack from this Gyarados and this, mainly the Gyarados, because the Iron Hands, of course, has that safety Goggles-itis, meaning it can still go for another Wild Charge into that Goldugo slot.
Yeah, and you say that the Goldingo is pretty safe at the moment. Now it is a bit more threatened from that Iron Hands, because another Wild Charge will pick up the knockout there, and like you say, with the safety goggles on the Iron Hands, it is going to ignore anything that the Amoonguss tries to do, be that a Rage Powder, be that a Spore, and that for that reason we're seeing Alessio switch it out and bring that Dragapult back onto the field.
Yeah, Dragapult, of course, being quite an offensive Pokemon. Goldugo just going for the Protect because it knows it needs a bit of that leftovers recovery, a bit more time to by this time as we have the Wild Charge from this Iron Hands into the Goldugo, not really affecting it. Two switches, so nothing really right now happening. But now you have the Dragapult on the field, meaning it can go for an attack here, possibly even a Terra Fire to maybe KO the Amoonguss, but then you still have that Iron Hands, and you don't really have a good way to deal with it because you are running Thunderbolt and the Make It Rain. Both attacks resisted by the Iron Hands.
Yeah, you've got the option here potentially to go after that Amoonguss by doubling into it. The Dragon Darts is the move of choice though, so we'll be doing good considerable damage with that Choice Band on there and doubling down with the Make It Rain. Not enough to get the Amoonguss though, hanging on 1 HP. That is a huge survival from Simone's Amoonguss, and just missing out from Alessio's side of the field with that double up.
That is amazing to see. The Wild Charge coming out into that Goldugo, being enough for that knockout. Then Amoonguss still surviving, meaning it has the potential to go for that Spore into that Dragapult right here, right now, putting that asleep. The offensive presence right now on Alessio's side is just suddenly gone in 1 turn.
Yeah, you had the situation where he had that nasty plot set up. He was in a good position. Now he had the Dragapult on the field, and you think the Amoonguss doesn't have Protect. It's a great choice to go into, and Simone doesn't really have too many options to switch out for anything to come in to soak up those hits. The Amoonguss though taking both of them, hanging on with 1 HP and then returning with vengeance to get that sleep onto the Dragonite, totally decommissioning it from this battle.
If you don't hit Amoonguss super effectively, it's gonna stay on the field. It's just that bulky. The first turn of sleep, mandatory turn of sleep, as the Iron Hands is able to go for a Sword Stance because it's not really threatened by Amoonguss and also not by the Dragapult. Pollen Puff coming out from Simone's side, his Amoonguss a bit faster, healing up that Iron Hands just back as the Clear Smoke actually coming out from the Alessio, predicting the Sword Stance might have come out, making sure that this Iron Hands will not be boosting its attack.
Yeah, and I think a nice play from Alessio just to keep things in check here, making sure that he has got that Amoonguss of his own on the field. So when he is identifying this great spot that Simone has found himself in where he can get that Sword Stance up, he's there ready to shut it down, take away those boosts with that Clear Smoke, and done it really well, giving the Dragapult time to wake up, because that's what you need. If you are Alessio at this stage, you need it to wake up soon and utilize those Dragon Darts that we've seen. It is part Dragon type, so it is going to be able to take these big electric attacks from the Iron Hands pretty comfortably, and the Amoonguss just needs to sit beside it, support it like it is doing as the Gyarados comes onto the field, and not able to drop and intimidate onto that Dragapult because of that clear body ability.
Yeah, 2 turns of sleep already done. Dragapult has to go for those Dragon Darts because it did lock itself into that attack. Now, you have the Gyarados being able to possibly go for Thunder Wave here on the Dragapult, but you do not want this Dragapult to be paralyzed right now because that Dragapult is your main offensive force here, so you want to deal as much damage as possible if you could. So you can redirect with the Amoonguss, but then again, you have the option of the Gyarados itself. Now, the Fluttermane is switching in, meaning if this Dragon Dart does come out, it will be both targeted at that Gyarados, and will it be enough is the question, really.
We are going to see a Terastallization here from the side of Simone onto that Gyarados, and it will be Terastallizing into the Fairy type, making it immune to the Dragon Darts, immune to anything that this Dragapult is locked into. Of course, because it is choice locked with that choice band, it can't change moves. So if it does wake up here, we aren't seeing the wake up, but it will be in a terrible position going into this next turn with 2 fairies on the field as the Gyarados goes for that taunt into the Amoonguss, preventing any further disruption from that Spore.
Wow, Simone clearly figuring out what holes to plug here in the team to try and make sure that Alessio is not able to get out. The Amoonguss is now taunted. The Gyarados might wake up, but it's stuck in Dragon Darts. It's not able to do anything. So the Amoonguss not really having a lot of options except for Pollen Puff, while of course, the Dragon Darting Dragapult is only able to really switch in this position. Yeah,
so you're kind of forced at this point, if you are Alessio, to switch out that Dragapult, which creates an opening for Simone, and he's doing this so well where he's got that Fluttermane in at the perfect time. He's taunted the Amoonguss. He's not threatened by the Spore. The Amoonguss almost has to switch out at this point unless it stays in and Pollen Puffs whatever comes in for the Dragapult, which is likely what we're going to see. But it gives it the room to set up that substitute, which you mentioned in the team preview. That is the big threat for Alessio when this Fluttermane comes onto the field. Not going to see that though, just going straight for that Moonblast.
But still hanging up. Pollen Puff coming out. That's the only move Alessio could have gone for. Had the Tinglu barely hanging on there, just a bit over half now. It is able to survive possibly a second Moonblast, but now the Amoonguss is on the field, and the Amoonguss can just go for a potential spore onto that left slot again. Simone is playing expertly. He's doing a well-executed, honestly, I don't know, a stealth mission. It's something to behold, really. He has planned about everything here.
Yeah, and then Alessio as well is doing extremely well to keep himself in this game. When Simone is positioning himself so well, he has got the Ting Lu in, does survive, just hanging on barely, and then allowing his Amoonguss to use that pollen puff to really good use, meaning that it sticks around on the field. We are seeing a terrestrialization from Alessio's side. It is going to go into that fire terror type now, giving it that resistance, really important resistance to that Fluttermane on the opposite side of the field.
Yeah, Fluttermane just going for protect, scouting out if that Ting Lu was able to go for that Terra, is indeed going for that. As a sand tube coming out into that Amoonguss, trapping it for at least 5 turns, and with the residual damage, making sure that this Amoonguss is not able to switch and not really use its regenerate.
Yeah, that's a really smart play there from Alessio, because I think the fact that you can take that Amoonguss out at any stage if you are Simone into the Gyarados potentially, or even the Iron Hands, and activate that regenerate ability. But even though kind of knowing that you're going to go to sleep, well, it's fine because I'm going to trap you in here. My Amoonguss's taunt is going to wear off at some point over the next turn or two, and I am going to be able to kind of threaten you with those spores. We do see the Fluttermane go for a substitute here, so it puts itself in a little bit of a safer position when that taunt does wear off on the Amoonguss. Yep. But again, the Amoonguss on Alessio's side of the field is going to be able to go for pollen puffs
or
into
the
clear smog into the Fluttermane to top up the health on that Ting Lu with the pollen puff.
Yep, the substitute right now really working out well for the Fluttermane. Now, no more taunt from the Amoonguss. Amoonguss is able to freely go for spores, but not really having a great target. The Ting Lu already taken 1 mandatory turn of sleep, so it has the possibility to wake up right now. Maybe a bit more luckier than the Dragon Pull was earlier, as the Rage Powder comes out from the Amoonguss. Shadow Ball from the Fluttermane onto the Amoonguss. Let's see how much damage this does. A little bit under half here. Still respectable damage, since it is still an Amoonguss on the field as well. The Ting Lu still sleeping for this turn, as the Clear Smog going into that Fluttermane and possibly breaking that substitute right now.
Yeah, as it does fade. Now, this is the thing, like, I think with the Ting Lu, it has had a turn of sleep. The Amoonguss is getting further chipped down. Now, the next Sand Tomb will be enough to take down that Amoonguss, so will be removed from the field and no longer be an option for Simone. And as soon as that Ting Lu does wake up, then it is in a position where it can start putting some big offensive pressure onto that Fluttermane, of course supported by the Amoonguss as well on Alessio's side of the field.
Yeah, the substitute yet again from the Fluttermane, trying to make sure that it does not get damaged. Ting Lu sleeping again. Alessio's Pokemon really needing a rest after all these 2 days of Swiss, as the Clear Smog coming out into that substitute. We already know that you need at least 2 to break that substitute, and the Amoonguss is finally going down by that Sand Tomb. Amoonguss gone, no more Rage Powders, no more Clear Smogs, no more even potentially the Pollen Puffs, meaning you have to play with these next 3 Pokemon and have to outplay them quite well, because Gyarados and Iron Hands are quite bulky Pokemon and can do quite a bit of damage as well to the Ting Lu.
Yeah, and the Ting Lu, the unfortunate thing for the Ting Lu is that this Gyarados is going to come in. It's got access to, it's got the taunt, so it can shut down the Amoonguss to prevent it going for those Rage Powders, and then it can go after the Ting Lu with those big waterfalls that are going to be super effective into the Ting Lu. Now, Alessio's done a great job of getting rid of the Amoonguss, but the next stage in his plan has to kind of work out, because it's very difficult from this stage, especially with a Fluttermane that's constantly just going for those Shadow Balls, going for those substitutes, making it difficult to kind of get any momentum here on Alessio's side of the field.
Yeah, just going for Protect, being safe behind that substitute. Gyarados back at it again with the taunt, making sure that this Amoonguss not really being able to do anything. But now, because that Gyarados is a Fairy type, that Ting Lu is able to go for a Heavy Slam potentially on it, but rather choosing to try and break that substitute onto the Fluttermane, which but is met with a Protect there. Now, Amoonguss has only the possibility to go for another Clear Smog or a possible Pollen Puff there. But Ting Lu being at full health, I feel like Clear Smog is fine to try and break whatever the Fluttermane has going on for it. And a Ting Lu can potentially go for a heavy slam as well onto the Gyarados.
Yeah, I think the Gyarados does feel threatened here. It's a good idea. You mentioned that the Fairy Terra typing puts it at a little bit of a disadvantage. It has the offensive capabilities to put a lot of pressure onto that Ting-Lu because of its Fire Terra typing. But at the same time, if you do miss the knockout, which you're likely to do because of the sheer defensive capabilities of that Ting-Lu, then you are going to get punished for that and you are going to lose the Gyarados in the process.
Yeah, I hope Alessio did not listen to me and went for a heavy slam into the Iron Hands, as it will not do a lot of damage. The special defense drop after a Shadow Ball from this Fluttermane into the Amoonguss, almost guaranteeing that this Amoonguss will take way more damage in the next turn, and a possible KO onto the Amoonguss as well. Heavy slam going out into that Fluttermane, definitely gonna break that sub there. Even with the Intimidate, will make sure that this Fluttermane is now out in the open. Still has the possibility to go for yet another substitute, or even a Protect when you're thinking it's going for that substitute.
I think if you're Alessio at this point, you really want the Amoonguss to get taken down. I think you want Simone to remove it so you can get that Dragapult in on the field. We know that it's taken 3 turns of sleep already, so the next turn it has the opportunity to attack. It is going to wake up, and it is going to go for an attack, which can threaten that Fluttermane. Now, the big thing that you need to make sure is that the Fluttermane does not have that substitute active when the Dragapult comes onto the field. You're going to have to make sure that you're consistent with your Ting-Lu and going for those heavy slams into that slot to make sure that it does carry on going into that. This is a risky play here as the Amoonguss goes out and the Dragapult coming onto the field. This is the target of the Fluttermane to go for a Shadow Ball here. Could be wrong, and it is a Shadow Ball, and it is into that Dragapult, and it is enough to take it down.
Yeah, you had the possibility of that other substitute yet again, or for a possible Protect. Unless you're probably thinking that Simone might have gone for that, but Simone completely reading that, just complete operation, a heavy slam into the Fluttermane. That is going down, but now you only have the Ting-Lu as your offensive presence, while this Iron Hands is here at +2, as we have seen that a Dream Punch does quite a bit of damage already. Now with Sword Stance as well, I'm gonna do a bit more.
Yeah, that's I mean, a huge play for Simone. I mean, identifying or just going for that Shadow Ball into that slot, especially that turn when you know there's a potential heavy slam coming out, is very risky, but the risk pays off there. Taking down the Dragapult, which you know is going to be the one thing that can cause you a lot of issues, and doubling down on that turn with the Sword Stance from the Iron Hands. We see a Detect here just to protect this turn. The Amoonguss still a threat on the field, but the Gyarados shutting that down now and going for
every time. That's whenever that Amoonguss wants to spore, that Gyarados is right there in the corner. Ting-Lu going for a Stomping Tantrum, failing right now against the Protect, meaning its next Stomping Tantrum will be a bit stronger, but this Ting-Lu has been intimidated already twice as well. Going for the Clear Smog this time onto the Iron Hands. You know what? What would have been a cool play, I just realized, if he Clear Smogged into his Ting-Lu, then he would have got rid of the drops as well.
That would be a
Waterfall coming out into the Ting-Lu, doing quite a bit of damage as the Iron Hands going for the Drain Push. Still not KOing the Ting-Lu. Okay, don't Clear Smog now. Don't listen to me. Please do not do it. Your Ting-Lu will be gone.
This Stomping Tantrum, though, like you say, is going to be doubled in power going into this Iron Hand. Not enough at all. All the Intimidate stacking up there, really making it and not effective at all. And the Iron Hand showing its capabilities here, and the Ting-Lu in not a great position now. Simone looking like he's going to wrap this one up, especially with that Amoonguss taunted now, and not in a position to utilize that Pollen Puff until after the next 2 attacks come out from the Gyarados and that Iron Hands.
Oh, my bad. I completely missed that. Stomping Tantrum doesn't fail on a Protect. I completely forgot. It still is the same base power, so it didn't really increase there. We do have, of course, Stomping Tantrum in other regards when it fails, like for example with Fake Out, it does double, but on a Protect it does not. But now the Ting-Lu indeed going down. Only Amoonguss on the field, and unfortunately the saying does not go where's a Pollen Puff, there's a way. So you can't really do a lot of damage here.
No, I think that the problem now is just to, well, the Amoonguss really hasn't got any offensive pressure against these two, and we do see the forfeit there from Alessio. What a close-knit match, but Simone doing everything right in that game to close it out at the end, and getting that Shadow Ball so correct onto the Dragapult was so crucial in that match, and really put him miles ahead of where he wanted to be, and making it very difficult for Alessio to kind of get any footing in that game.
Honestly, I do have to respect Alessio as well, because he lost his Golden quite early. You were able to nasty ball you, but you weren't really able to do anything not a lot of damage with it. But still, with those 3 Pokemon, with the Dragon Pult asleep, with even a Ting-Lu asleep for multiple turns, no turn 1's wake-ups, unfortunately, still bringing it quite close, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, incredible job by Alessio. I felt a lot of times that he was just under so much pressure at so many different points in that match, but he still took it right down to the wire. And I think if you kept the Amoonguss in, rather than switching it out to the Dragapult, that turn that he did, he would have actually knocked out the Fluttermane, because we saw the Heavy Slam come out at that stage. The Amoonguss might have went down that turn, but you think, well, that's not too bad, because now I can bring in my Dragapult, and now I threaten the Iron Hands and the Gyarados, which are pretty low health at the moment, and you have your pick of moves there. You can lock into maybe something like the Phantom Force, take yourself out of the field for a turn, and then come back in and remove the Gyarados first of all, and then you can concentrate down a lot easier on that Iron Hands 2-on-1 situation. So just how it played out there, I don't think Alessio played it wrong. I think maybe Simone got a bit fortunate with when Alessio decided to switch out the Amoonguss into the Dragapult.
It's as you said, Simone was playing quite well with the switches as well, even with the Dragon Darts. You don't really have a lot of options when there's 2 fairies on the field. So your main way of thinking is, of course, you're gonna switch out because you can't do anything. Simone was seeing this perfectly, knowing what the last Pokemon is, being that Ting-Lu, switching yet again to his Amoonguss that time to just be able to spore that Ting-Lu potentially as well. So a lot of plays there, a lot of well thought out plays, just looking at the end game here and seeing what could happen. As we have the next game, we have Golden-Go, and next to that Ting-Lu, and we have Amoonguss and the Fluttermane this time around. Yeah, the Fluttermane not in a great position coming into this first turn here. I mean, it does pressure the Golden-Go on Alessio's side of the field, of course, with a Shadow Ball, but it is threatened itself from a Heavy Slam from that Ting-Lu, and also from a Make It Rain, which it doesn't really want to contend with. The Amoonguss not in a great spot against the Golden-Go in particular, because it can't spore it, can't really Rage Powder the Make It Rain. So if you see something like the Ting-Lu switch out from Alessio into the Amoonguss, it makes sense to take advantage of that Golden-Go this turn, go for that Make It Rain, and try and pick up a quick knockout onto that Fluttermane. Yes, exactly. And the Fluttermane, of course, being boosted energy, raising its special attack, meaning this Golden-Go is a bit threatened there by a super effective Ghost type attack, as the Golden-Go has decided to go for that Terra Water, making sure that it will not be hit super effectively. Amoonguss just going for the Rage Powder, making sure that this Ting-Lu will not Heavy Slam into that slot, as the Shadow Ball is coming out into that Golden-Go. It's still doing quite a bit of damage of neutral. Make It Rain coming out is doing a respectable amount to the Fluttermane, surprisingly not KOing. So, and then the Heavy Slam as well coming out into Amoonguss. And now suddenly Simone has 2 Pokemon that are already quite chipped. The Golden-Go is still quite reliably healthy as well, because it's not being hit super effectively right now. It doesn't really mind the Amoonguss as well. So the Golden-Go, really good position. I think the Vessel of Runes not helping the Golden-Go, and it's kind of damage output there, because normally you would think the Make It Rain into the Fluttermane would always be a guaranteed knockout, but I think the Vessels of Rune here kind of changing that damage calculation and allowing the Fluttermane to stick around on the field. The Shadow Ball as well, obviously taken quite well from that Golden-Go. It did terrestrialize here, so it didn't have that ghost type weakness any longer. But now we are seeing that Ting-Lu switch out. So that defense, special defense kind of boost that we are seeing will be removed, and the Fluttermane just going for a Protect here. Yep, Protect here, as the Golden-Go itself is also going for Protect, just making sure that its leftovers recovery will be working out, as the Amoonguss does spore into what used to be a Ting-Lu to make sure to get something asleep. Alessio, I think, is quite tired of sleeping right now, so just switching in the Amoonguss, who is luckily immune as well as is the Golden-Go. Yeah, and I quite like this play from Alessio. He's putting himself in a really nice position where he's almost forcing the Fluttermane out of the field, so something else has to come in, or you're picking up the knockout onto that Pokemon, which is a big offensive threat to your team. But at the same time, you've now got an Amoonguss on your side of the field. You can redirect any of those single target attacks that can come out from the Fluttermane. Stock those up pretty nicely, you know, and at the same time you can get yourself that Make It Rain to kind of get a little bit more damage onto the field, especially onto the things that are maybe causing you a lot
lot of issues like we saw in Game 1.
Yep, the Amoonguss switching out for that Iron Hands. Iron Hands, of course, not really caring about the Make It Rain or the Thunderbolt because it's still quite bulky. Moonblast coming out into the Amoonguss slot, predicting possibly a switch out or going into that Golden Go itself, which was a water type, as the Rage Part did redirect that, and then the Golden Go going for the Make It Rain, KOing that Fluttermane as well.
Yeah, and now it's a good trade-off. You get rid of the Fluttermane, a big threat on Simone's side of the field. The Goldingo not in the greatest spot against this Iron Hands because it is a -2 special attack at the moment. Those 2 drops from the Make It Rain, so it's not offensively the present that it was at the start of the battle. That's something that Alessio is going to have to consider fixing either this turn or by switching it out, resetting those drops. You can go for a nasty plot, but do you want to stay in against this Iron Hands? I think it's probably better to stay in right now because you don't really want to switch that Goldingo out and take a potential Spore that's an easy target for Simone on his side of the field, while his Iron Hands pretty much has a free turn going for a Sword Stance if he wants to, rather than going for a Wild Charge, which we are actually seeing him lock into.
Yes, we do have the switch out from the Golden Go to the Dragapult, meaning if the Amoonguss from Simone's side went for that Spore, will be able to hit this Dragapult as well. Wild Charge into Dragapult, doing a respectable amount of damage, of course. It's even though resisting it. Amoonguss going for the Spore, but into the Amoonguss slot this time around, predicting the Amoonguss would have been the one to switch as the Clear Smog coming out into the Iron Hands, just making sure that this Iron Hands does not Sword Stance, because that is quite a big threat to have against you as well.
Yeah, especially the water terror typing on the Goldingo. It is going to be really susceptible to those big electric type attacks from the Iron Hand. So a nice switch there to the Dragapult and getting it in for free because it wasn't punished. The Spore wasn't doubled down into that slot. You can see Simone is thinking about maybe the Amoonguss going out, but not the case. The Dragapult in now and is going to be able to put some offensive pressure on the field. It has, as we've mentioned, got access to big attacking moves like that Phantom Force, like Outrage as well. But the Amoonguss on Simone's side of the field in a nice position to still support this Iron Hands while it does get set up.
Yes, absolutely. As the Dragapult does go for the Outrage into that Iron Hands, still hanging on. Quite a bit of damage, no Team Power, of course, next to you. A Wild Charge coming out again onto the Dragapult. Is this enough with the recoil onto this Iron Hands? Iron Hands still hanging on, and the Amoonguss saving the day there with the Pollen Puff, making sure that this Iron Hands will be quite healthy yet again, as the Amoonguss is also Pollen Puffing the Dragapult on Alessio's side. Both players really just wanting to deal as much damage as possible, but the Amoonguss is still being there to heal each other up as well.
Yeah, and a really nice play from both the Amoongusses, making sure that their partner Pokemon are staying as healthy as possible. We are going to see a bit of a switch up in play now for Simone, as he's going to lock in the Detect, I think, on his Iron Hand. So protecting it this turn from any damage coming out from the potential Dragapult, especially that big Outrage, because you can see how much damage it's doing, targeting into that slot once again, which opens the door for the Amoonguss on Simone's side of the field to go for that Spore and shut that down, at least for this next turn.
Yes, exactly. Now that the Dragapult is asleep, it's not really forcing any ways to do anything to do with this Iron Hands. Iron Hands, the perfect detector, making sure that the Outrage, of course, would not have possibly killed him, together with the Clear Smog for any removal of the Sword Stance boost. Now, will the Dragapult switch or will it just stay in? Because as long as the Iron Hands doesn't have any sort of setup, the Dragapult is not too threatened, so you can just keep going, I feel.
Yeah, but both players are in a position at the minute, you know, just to keep topping up with their Pollen Puffs every turn. I don't think either Pokemon are doing enough damage to really take down either Pokemon. I think the big thing that we really want to make sure that you are trying to deal with as soon as possible is that line of support, is that Amoonguss. But it does mean for Alessio that he's going to have to switch that Dragapult out, and maybe not the most favorable thing to do, because it is matched up pretty well against that Iron Hands, in particular when you can support your Dragapult with that Clear Smog from the opposing Amoonguss. We do see a Spore come out, but the Dragapult doesn't switch, and another Pollen Puff from the Amoonguss into the Dragapult, just keeping it as healthy as possible. Now you're going to have to focus down with a Clear Smog into the Iron Hands now, I think, this next turn, if you are Alessio, just to reset those Sword Stance boosts.
Yes, just going for the Detect, trying to bait out the Clear Smog, and possibly, if the Dragapult is awake, but Alessio's Dragapult really not wanting to wake up right now. Spore going out into the Dragapult, not working, of course, because it's already asleep, as Amoonguss did go for the Clear Smog. Now a +2, a Wild Charge will do quite a bit more to Dragapult. Dragapult, of course, not being the most bulky of Pokemon. Luckily, it resisting both stabs from the Iron Hands, but still, that is an Iron Hands at +2, which will be quite scary to face up against.
Yeah, it will be doing considerable damage. I mean, we have mentioned that Dragapult has got that pot dragging typing, so will resist the electric typing. But, you know, Iron Hands is a very strong Pokemon, and with that Sword Stance boost further adding to that offensive output, it is still going to be hitting extremely hard. We've already seen the damage when it's not got that Sword Stance boost. It is pretty respectable. As we see the Dragapult wake up, it is locked into that Outrage. It is going to be going into the Amoonguss this time, but not enough. The Amoonguss hanging on with the Wild Charge, following up and doing some considerable damage to that Dragapult.
Absolute. A lot of damage as the Amoonguss does go for the Spore onto the Dragapult yet again, making sure that this Dragapult will have to take another mandatory turn of sleep. Now, the Clear Smog going into the Iron Hands, and you can Wild Charge into Dragapult, possibly KOing it, but the Amoonguss can then, of course, Pollen Puff it, heal it again, or you can Sword Stance right now, expect 2 turns of sleep to possibly do, again, a bit more of that damage. We're playing a little bit more of a slow game right now, but the Amoonguss is getting chipped down on Simone's side, which is what Alessio really wants, because as soon as that Amoonguss is gone, it will not the Dragapult will not be put to sleep, and the Iron Hands will not be kept being healed by this Pollen Puff as well.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that Alessio's kind of hoping for, is that Dragapult wakes up again and then can launch an Outrage into that Amoonguss to finish it off, to take away that line of recovery that is constantly topping up that Iron Hands and making it such a formidable threat. I think once the Amoonguss, like you mentioned, is removed from the field, then I think the Dragapult is in a much better position. Also, now that the Fluttermane has been already knocked out on Simone's side of the field, the Dragapult a lot freer to kind of do it at once, especially if it's also got its own Amoonguss sitting next to it, keeping it healthy with that Pollen Puff.
Yes. Gyarados being switched in for that Amoonguss. Amoonguss, of course, taking quite a bit of damage already. Gyarados now still being at full health. Intimidate not really working on Dragapult. Dragapult taking another turn of sleep as a Wild Charge comes out onto Dragapult, doing a lot of damage. But now you have to choose, because if you Clear Smog, I do believe the next Waterfall plus Wild Charge will KO this Dragapult. The Dragapult has the possibility to wake up, and you can deal a lot of damage. But is it worth it in comparison to losing your Dragapult?
Not right. I think you're right. You identify a great situation here, and I think Simone is aiming for this position right now, where he isn't able to utilize that Pollen Puff any longer, because if you do get one attack off into this Dragapult, if it doesn't wake up, of course, then you are in a much stronger position to knock it out here and take away. But it does wake up.
Wakes up.
The Outrage is coming out. Is it going to be enough? It is enough to take down the Amoonguss. But at what cost? Is the Dragapult going to go down to this Wild Charge from the Iron Hands? And it is going to go down in return, but you do take down the Amoonguss in the process.
Yes, exactly. Meaning only that Simone only has 2 Pokemon left, being that Gyarados, and honestly, that Gyarados has been doing quite a bit of work against this Amoonguss with the possibility of taunt there. But now no more healing, no more Pollen Puffing, at least on Simone's side, which you still have the Go, which is Terra Water, which you rather not want to have against this Iron Hands, of course. But this Gyarados actually does have Protect for 1 turn, but if you're able to bait out the Protect, you're able to Thunderbolt to Gyarados, possibly KO it, and then you can see what the last Pokemon is on to deal with this Iron Hands. You gotta keep Clear Smogging, of course, this Iron Hands, because it's getting quite difficult. As Go does go for Protect here. Yeah. To try and bait out deep Protect from the Gyarados, meaning Thunderbolt next turn can definitely do quite a bit of damage as the Wild Charge comes out into that Go slot. The Amoonguss is now free to able to go for a Clear Smog, just making sure that it is doing a bit of damage to the Gyarados, it seems.
Yeah, and I think that you call that turn perfectly. I think the Goldingo going for the protect there was a really good call, because the Gyarados has to protect because of that big threat from that Thunderbolt from the Goldingo. The Goldingo, a threat itself, but I mean, if you get the return where you go for the Thunderbolt, you pick up the knockout onto the Gyarados, then it's not too bad, because you can obviously then get the knockout onto the Goldingo for your trouble. But then it comes down to the Iron Hands and Amoonguss, and then it really gets tough to decide this battle.
It's time for the Terra Roulette. Does the Gyarados go for the Terra or not? Did Alessio see this coming? Did he go for an attack with the Make It Rain onto this Gyarados, or did he just Thunderbolt into this Gyarados? Because it's quite important right now. Gyarados having that Terra Fairy type right now. Possibly, if you go for Make It Rain, if you predicted the Terra typing right now, it would do quite a bit. But it is the Thunderbolt doing a little bit of damage. Not the 4 times effective, not the super duper effective, as the taunt comes out into that Amoonguss. Amoonguss just falling for the town. Wild Charge into that Goldingo. Is it enough? It is enough for the Goldingo, meaning the Amoonguss is the only thing on the field just now until that Tinglu comes in.
That's a credible play by Simone. He has shut down and taken down that Goldingo in great fashion, using the terrestrialization at the perfect time, optimal time, making sure that the Gyarados, which would have went down to the Thunderbolt, now survives, able to get the taunt off into the Amoonguss and leaving just the Tinglu and that Amoonguss against the Gyarados and the Iron Hands.
Yeah, Tinglu, it's a bulky Pokemon, but can it take a Waterfall and a Dream Punch from his Iron Hands? You have these Tinglus that are trained to be faster than some Iron Hands, of course, where you can try to abuse more the force that it brings, the force of nature that Tinglu brings, of the ground quaking, making sure that his Iron Hands doesn't do that much. Gyarados going for the Waterfall, still fast, doing a little bit under half as the Dream Punch coming out. Is
it is not enough
just yet.
Not enough. The Tinglu hanging on and going to be able to go for an attack now. Which target does he go into? It is the Heavy Slam into the Gyarados, picking up the knockout there. And now Gyarados falling to a critical hit. Probably doesn't really make too much difference. I think the Gyarados
Rocky Helmet. We forgot of the Rocky Helmet. Is the Rocky Helmet enough? Is the Tinglu just going to go down on the Rocky Helmet? It was quite low. Let's see. Tinglu is down! It is down! The helmet on that Gyarados really working out. We've seen so many items on Gyarados right now. With we have seen Satikos, we've seen Lumberry, we've seen Citrus Berry, we've seen Alcohol, but the Rocky Helmet coming in clutch right now. Now, Amoonguss versus the Iron Hands, not being able really to do a lot of damage. Amoonguss just being able to just pump up our Player Smoke, just making sure that this Iron Hands does eventually go down. So this is a little bit of a war of attrition, like slowly just whittling down each other here.
Letting us just take in what has just happened, because that was an incredible turn. Utilizing the item, the Rocky Helmet there. If you take down my Gyarados, yes, I'm going to do enough damage to make sure that the Rocky Helmet, residual damage, the chip there is enough to take you down.
This game
nullifying the Pollen Puff.
This game is not over. He has to keep going for Dream Punches to heal just enough. But the Amoonguss has to keep going for Clear Smokes to make sure that this doesn't set up either way. So does Dream Punch heal enough so that the Amoonguss does go down for Clear Smokes? Because if I feel 4 or 5 Dream Punches right now to make this Amoonguss go down. How many Clear Smokes do we need? We need a few more, I feel. So
Clear Smoke is out damaging. The Amoonguss is out damaging the Iron Hands at the moment.
Yep, another Dream
Critical
Punch.
hit will change that.
Critical hit, yeah, that's always the possibility. Even though this is looking quite dire for Alessio, critical hits are a thing that can happen. Clear Smoke coming out into the Iron Hands, not doing that much. Again, no critical hit on this time. Yeah, if he needs one, he needs like 2 in a row. Dream Punch coming out into the Amoonguss. Very close, we're almost there. Already bumping hands as well. I think we can see it, the writing on the wall. Clear Smoke coming out into the Iron Hands one more time. And then, of course, we're just going to see it one more time happen. Oh, yeah, just go for a Wild Charge as the battle is cast. And well played to both of these players. Excellently done. Simone is the victor of this top 4. Well done.
What an incredible show from Simone. He controlled that match from start to finish. It was so difficult because Alessio played so well through that game. But Simone showing his true ability in this game and just closing it out and doing it in such good fashion with that Rocky Helmet and then with the Drain Punches with the Iron Hands.
I completely forgot about the Rocky Helmet. It's not an item you see that often on Gyarados, I feel. It's not something that I have encountered a lot of times, but it working out amazingly in that situation where you're just, you are able to survive a move with your Tinglu. Okay, that's fine. You Heavy Slam me, goodbye.
Yeah. The terrestrialization at that point in the game as well, you thought, oh, the gold dingo's coming in, and then you think, oh, the Thunderbolt, 4 times weakness. But no, Simone kept it until that very end point in the game. Perfect timing, allowed it to survive the Thunderbolt, get the taunt off into the Amoonguss, and then get the revenge on the gold dingo with the Iron Hands.
It was such a hard call to make. Alessio could probably still knew that the Terra was a possibility there, but it is such a hard call to make. It is Terra Fairy, and luckily you have that Make It Rain, but is it even enough for the Gyarados? Because it was quite healthy, and Gyarados is quite bulky on its
I think it was full health when it came onto the field, or very close to.
Yeah, that was quite difficult then to see. But yeah, it's one of those things where you have to try and kind of see what is going to happen. But Simone excellently playing by keeping a Terra. You have most of the time you have these 2 situations that happen with the Terra type. One, you go all out, turn 1, I'm Terra, this. I suddenly surprised you, and I tried to maintain my momentum as well. Or at the end, suddenly, oh yeah, right, you still have that. Oh my God.
yeah, and I think that you've got to take your hat off as well to Alessio with how well he played that, taking it as close a match as it possibly could go. You know, the clear small got a critical hit. A bit of a better damage roll at any point there. He would have tied that match up and taken it to a game 3. So, you know, like, credit to both players there. What a great semi-final for us.
Absolutely.
But obviously, Simone now is progressing on to the finals and will be facing Davide in Turin final this weekend.
It's going to be interesting to see the New Balance versus Earthworm.
Who will be victorious?
No, the Worm.
It's going to be a great match because I think both players have showcased this entire weekend how well versed they are with their teams.
Yes.
They've come up against very difficult obstacles, and each time they've been featured on the streams, they've kind of overcome those obstacles quite confidently as well. So, you know, it's going to be an amazing spectacle.
Even though Simone has won these games quite like 2-0, he won that 2-0. But you saw as the time progresses, it was still anyone's games at
fine
almost
margins,
like at any time. It was quite kind of crazy to see as well. The Amoonguss being able to survive at such a low as well.
There's so many points in that set where it was just so close, wasn't it? The survivals were amazing.
Were on point. Just making sure that you are able to still do something. That these Pokemon are excellently trained. It's like he knew. He just knew. He was in his mind's eye. He was like, "I'm surviving on 1 HP."
The Ting-Lu though going down, I think there was you know, like I know we've talked about it already, but that Rocky Helmet there coming in, and that is why you have the Rocky Helmet. Why it's such a great choice on something like the Gyarados, because of that Fairy Terra typing as well. It goes a little bit further because the Terra typing can be quite detrimental to you in certain situations, exactly like that. But then in the, you know, you thinking, can a Waterfall, can a Drain Punch do enough? And no, it can't. It can't. It was so close. It hung on. Alessio, great for him. And then you think, right, can he get the knockout with the Heavy Slam? Yes, he can. And that turn seemed to take about 20 minutes just to reveal if the damage from the Rocky Helmet was enough or not.
It was like, wait, Rocky Helmet. Rocky Helmet. How much is it? How much HP did he have? Tell us now. It's in those moments where you feel like time's just slowing down. Heavy Slam. Like going into it, like Rocky Helmet. Like in the moment yourself, you're just like, oh my God, I want to know right now. Show this to me. Excellently played.
And then it revealed, and then it went down, and it was just the Amoonguss against the world. And if it was one Pokemon against the world, you know, Amoonguss has been phenomenal this weekend, so you'd think it could do it. But the other Pokemon that we have highlighted throughout the broadcast is that Iron Hands. But we do have Simone ready for an interview with Shauna, so we're going to throw it over to the couch, hear a bit more about that last match from Simone.
Thank you so much, Lee and Simon, for that introduction. I am here with Simon, the winner of our second top 4 match, of course, and our second finalist. So it's been a long tournament. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay. Kind of tired because my team is kind of boring to play, not gonna lie. But yeah, I'm feeling good that I'm at finals.
Yeah, so we have actually been talking a lot about Iron Hands as a Pokemon, and we did see some interesting teams in Top Cut, but only 2 of those Iron Hands, and you're playing one of them. So is that maybe one of your MVPs?
Yeah, as I said in a previous interview, like Iron Hands carried me a lot. Swords plus Terrafire is just hard for a lot of balanced team to deal with, because Amungus can spore you, Arcanine can wisp you, and Intimidate cycling doesn't really work if you're putting me at -1 and I'm going +2.
Yeah.
So yeah, Iron Hands is my MVP, my carry, obviously.
So, and speaking of Intimidate, obviously that doesn't work against a Dragapult, which you did just face off against. Was that a little bit of a difficult matchup?
Yeah, when I was preparing for the match, I was very afraid of that Dragapult. I was afraid of my opponent leading just Dragapult Chen power right off the bat. And my plans, my leads were specifically made to have something to do into that, because Dragon Darts with Choice Band plus Sword of Ruin just does so much damage. I was running some cards before the match and it does like 90 to Gyarados, and my Gyarados has a lot of defense EVs, not EVs.
Yeah, but in that case, maybe the Terra Fairy coming in a little bit clutch.
Yeah, the Terra Fairy was kind of clutch in game 1. It didn't really matter in game 1, but just knowing that he couldn't Dragon Darts me was... because when I went for Terra Fairy, I had both Gyarados and Fluttermane on the field, and if both of them are fairies, then Dragon Dart doesn't hit anything. And as I said before, Dragon Dart does 90 to Gyarados, so I wanted to avoid that. He ended up sleeping anyway, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, so it's actually been a while since we've seen you in a finals. Last time I believe was in 2018, right?
2017.
2017.
Yeah, it was
right?
for the 18th circuit, but the actual year was 2017. Yeah, and it feels good to be here once again.
Are you happy to maybe be representing Italy here in the finals
I
in
mean,
Turin?
both me and my opponent are representing Italy. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna let you get ready for that finals and have a short break before that. So yeah, we ourselves are gonna head into a short break, but don't go anywhere. Stay tuned for our final match, which will be happening very, very soon.